actually what I do. The outline of my presentation is compounded of introduction, ELF, perspective and culture, relevance of the study, general objectives, review of literature, methodology, context of the study, participants, research questions and data analysis, final remarks, and my references. Just to have an overview, in the last years, many linguists have claimed that English nowadays has changed its status. So we need to adapt to new ways of teaching. In this perspective, the English as a lingua franca comes along to help these new ways of teaching. This means abandoning traditional attitudes, standard varieties, accuracy, and culture from inner circle countries, that is, United States and Britain. According to Seidhofer, 2001-2005, English as a lingua franca is the language spoken among people who do not share the same language or the same culture. And the ELF perspective then, in the views of this research, is the inclusion of different varieties of English. The emphasis is on fluency over accuracy, and the local and global aspects are highly considered in the ELF perspective. For this research, I used Sarmento's ideas of culture, which says that culture regards culture as behavior and habits, information, language, and history. Moitaloglu says that ELF, English as a lingua franca, and discursive heterogeneity are necessary for surviving this postmodern world. Because nowadays, the world is very hybrid, the language is very hybrid, English is very hybrid, and we need to adapt. So this investigation seems to be essential since Mali 2009 affirms that there is a lack of observation in English classes of non-native speakers, in the case of Brazilian students, regarding English as a lingua franca. My general objectives are, firstly, to investigate the relations between English as a lingua franca and culture in EFL classes, and also to unveil teachers' beliefs and practices towards culture. For the review of literature, I worked with Seidhofer, Mali, Rajagopalan, and McKay, and some others, Matos, and Moitaloglu. Seidhofer says that after the advent of technology, many varieties of English have emerged. And altogether with these varieties, Mali says that a lot of prejudice and discrimination have appeared too. And this, according to Rajagopalan, brings inferiority complex. This discrimination brings a lot of inferiority complex to our students. So this for him is a problem. And people need, according to Mali, people need to make use of English according to their own needs. Bring local contexts and local ideas to English classes in order to stop this inferiority complex. So McKay and Mali say that the teaching of culture should not follow an inner circle model like British standard or American standard only, because we have a lot of other varieties. And then Rajagopalan asks, if the focus nowadays in the hybrid world is to teach students to communicate broadly or more broadly, to communicate to the world, why to focus on American and British English? The focus is much bigger than that, right? And then Matos says that subverting the dominant order and reaching for local alternatives are extremely necessary. And Moitaloglu says that also he talks about the hybridism, that English is extremely hybrid language and that hybridizes itself and it hybridizes others. So teachers and students need to adapt to these new ways of teaching English and not focusing just on old traditional ways. My methodology was a qualitative, interpretative, non-interventionist case study. My instruments were interview guide with 29 questions, voice recorder, notebook and laptop for transcriptions and notes, And my procedures were to observe the teacher participants in class, take notes of everyday practices, tape record 16 classes, 8 each teacher, transcribe relevant sections, and then interview the teacher participants at the end of the observations. At the end, because I didn't want to influence anyhow the teachers that I was working with. And in order not to stop any regular flow during the class. The context of this study, well, it was here in extracurricular courses. They are private courses at UFSC. The students are people from all ages, from community and from UFSC. They were two groups, Advanced 1 and 2, and the book was The American Inside Out. The reason for my choice was the non-acquaintance and the schedule. And I worked with two teachers, Jess, 34 years old, and Jay, 54. She is English from Birmingham, and he's from Paraná, Curitiba. She has experience of 17 years old, and he 28 years teaching English. And they both consider themselves fluent bilinguals and were very comfortable in speaking English. So my first research question was, what are teachers' beliefs about culture in the classroom? So for Jess, culture and language are as one, is a unit for her. And in her classes, we can perceive a lot of information as culture. She regards information as culture in class. And she works a lot of English culture, foreigners' habits, foods, beliefs, and sometimes music and movies, which matches Sarmento's ideas of culture, and named culture as habits, although she works a lot with information. So Sarmento also talks about culture as information. Also, and for Jay's class, culture and language, like, not for Jay's class, but for Jay's ideas, culture and language are disconnected. For him, in order to learn a language, you don't need necessarily to learn the culture of that language. Although it's a little bit of contradiction here because he does a lot of critical discussions. He provokes a lot of critical discussions in class regarding culture, local culture, more specifically the Brazilian culture. So he says, não vejo a língua como instrumento de transmissão de cultura, although he works with a lot of culture in class. Number 2 is, do the teachers have any preference of cultural aspects? How are teachers working with the global and local aspects as a way to develop cultural awareness in their students? Jazz says to that, eu gosto muito de música popular brasileira, nossa cultura indígena, culinária, e os alunos sempre trazem. So, this os alunos sempre trazem, in her speech, is giving voice to the students. She opens a space in her class to give voice to the students, to the local culture, to bring local culture to class. And we can notice in some of the examples. And this corroborates Mali and Rádio Colombo, 2009 and 4. For Jay, he says, the cultural influences, right? Preferences. He says, todos, adoro Brasil. So he brings local here, adoro Brasil. Right? Tanta coisa, a música brasileira, história, do país, de Florianópolis, a vida, o dia a dia, não tem como falar tudo. It also corroborates the ideas of the authors of this research, bringing local culture to class. And then avoiding prejudice and discrimination, right? Although they have some ideas of the traditional ways and some ideas of ELF perspective. This is one example of Jazz class, where she brings, in America, they wash the dishes, while in England they wash up. It's like they wash the dishes and leave the rest. Moita Lopes and Sarmento say that 70% of the teachers use American English standards, while 30% make use of British standards in class. And this is one example. In a simple comment, she decides to give an example or a comparison between American and British. And where is the local here? Of course, it doesn't need to be all the time, but it's just an example. For number 3, do the teachers focus more on meanings than on formal aspects related to standard language? How the teacher's way of correcting can reinforce linguistic prejudice? Excerpt 11, Jess says, propiciar a comunicação. So the focus is on message, right? Quanto mais accurate, melhor. So here the focus is not on ELF anymore, but on the standards. Focus on accuracy. So it's like this uncertainty about standards and ELF perspectives. O brasileiro tem a capacidade de pronunciar, de falar inglês sem muito sotaque. O brasileiro consegue sim reproduzir os sons corretamente. Consegue. So this goes against Mali, Rajagopala, Matos, and some other authors from this research, because it's not focusing on the local anymore. It might bring some prejudice. In excerpt 11, although we have the opposite. If you are a food, what kind of food would you like to be? And then the student says, I would like to be pasta because it's easy to prepare and it didn't lose much time in the kitchen. And then teacher says, oh, that's nice. You don't waste much time. You don't waste time in the kitchen. So she didn't correct. She didn't stop any regular flow for corrections. She understood the intelligibility and the message was more important than accuracy and formal, right? And then the excerpt 13, this is from Jay's class. He said, have you ever had anything stolen? While I was traveling, they entered my apartment. They stole TV. How long after you discovered? I think it was a few hours ago. Oh, after? Yes, a few hours after. I think they had the information I was traveling. So in a conversation with the student here, he didn't stop to correct it either. So both teachers focused on meanings, approaching the ELF perspective, and did not stop any interaction for correction. This corroborates all those authors from my research too. And then number 4 is, what are cultural themes that teachers deal with in class? Both teachers worked with the book teams, the American Inside Out, and also the students brought some themes to the class. So they had this sharing of information all the time. They discussed about preferences, values, cultures, aspects. So the interaction was not theatrical, to prepare the students to one day talk to a native person. No. The students were bringing their opinions and their points of view to the conversation and to the interaction. So this is giving value and voice to the students. It corroborates all of my choices of authors here. And my final remarks are that both teachers worked in a similar way regarding ELF, trying to negotiate meaning and bring the students' reality to class. Jess and Jay seem to have some contradictory beliefs towards culture. They also acted different ways along their practices, sometimes in a more standard approach, sometimes in the ELF approach. But although some signs of change towards the ELF perspective were noticed in both teachers' practices. So this was something. ELF perspective then can change. It can be this new way that all the authors have been saying that we need to change and to adapt to new ways of teaching English to avoid prejudice in class and discrimination. And these are my references. And these are my findings. Thank you.